Bernard, I want to chip in the question by Chang Hui Ling, who asks, in the same line of relating Newman and Jesuit education, Newman talked about the building of a community of learning, teachers and students. In the recent 3 years, the Society of Jesus talks about forming men and women for others. How do you see this dimension of the Jesuit higher education as the building of capacities for dialogue and collaboration with others, like other students, persons outside the university? So maybe Bernard and Liam, if you want to address also this question.
I think, oh, thank you so much for the question. This is a really good question. That maybe, Professor Giron can supplement later, right? Initially, I found, they've been doing it very successfully. For the, the foundation of, also I want to, have some following question, regarding, Professor Morgan's remarks and also the contribution. Okay, well, I'll talk about that later. But regarding the, this kind of men and women for others and with others, for every single university that I visited, I mean, among all those 30 interviewees, and most of them, they can, speak out this, this core value of the Jesuit universities. It's so clear over there. No matter is, that non-Jesuit environment, some countries actually, well, I mean, regarding the background of the country, like, Japan and also Indonesia, I also, mentioned, this kind of geopolitical factors, before talking about the interviews content. Some of them actually, they don't have a lot of Christians over there. For example, Japan, literally they have less than 1% of Christians or Catholic altogether. According to statistic calculation, you might see that, well, it's almost like insignificant. And Indonesia is far more lenient. They said, we have 6, identified religions, and Catholic and Catholicism is one of them. So we have about 8 to 9% of Christians and Catholics over there. Okay, we are freely, in a sense, we have the space to promote this religious interpretation according to the Catholic teaching. But anyway, well, for this fundamental forming men and women for others and with others, I think they have some university like in no matter it's in the Philippines or in the Indonesia, they have very well planned programs. And as a matter of fact, for Jesuits, they have a custom, a culture to have the dialogue, okay, between the layman and and the Jesuit, and also with religious or non-religious. Every now and then they have promote this equality. Well, my religion is not well, we always have this dialogue. It doesn't mean that we are superior to your stance or your philosophy. And that's the well, something mentioned by Professor Giron about the
Liam is fine, Bernard, honestly, please.
Okay, Liam, about adaptation of Jesuit, and that's that's something I would like to echo well, Professor Stephen Morgan's talk about the 5 volume of Newman's sermon. Well, in my study, I also mentioned the point of formation or self-formation of students. Now, but the end result, of course, for the Catholic Church or Jesuit, okay, of course, you always need to think about the discernment, about the spirituality. But in some countries, there's a big challenge, okay, like Japan. And of course, well, legally, from the legal perspective or lenses, you can well enjoy this kind of religious freedom. However, they also have something written down very clearly. Well, for example, Japan is not a religious country; it's a non-religious country, and a lot of people are not happy if you promote religion within this kinds of subsidized environment. Most of the universities are subsidized by the government in any means. Yeah, no matter it's a project-based or into the fund-based, project. Yeah, these are this is about the obstacle over there, I would say. So whether you can form the human religiously or not, yeah, maybe it's not the not the short-term priority for Jesuit in some situations. But of course, according to Newman, it's very straightforward, right? He also said that religion should be included in the curriculum of the university at the time. Yep. And the idea of a university also mentioned this. Yep. For religion should be the top priority of a university. However, it's very difficult, yeah, for the application process. Yeah, for that issue, maybe Father Stefan can chip in. Yeah, well. And yeah, you must experience something, or your colleagues must experience something differently. Yeah, in Asia or in some other countries.
As if I may just chip in, indeed, this is of course a huge issue in China, where there are clear restrictions on how you teach religion or research to conducting research on religion. So my argument would be, in these countries like Japan, China, could the social doctrine of the church be a framework which is basically also secular values like solidarity, subsidiarity, orientation to the common good, which are acceptable in an atheist environment, but of course clearly are shaped by religious cultures, see. So that is maybe both to you.
It's very, very good point. Yeah. Well, I get a sense. Yeah, I saw that Jesuit in the past. Yeah, they have sort of not strategies, but the adaptation way. When you say that the common good, I also, well, there are different meanings for common good, according to my understanding, according to, Simon Margeson. Yeah. He said that there are three, aspects. One is about the common good. Well, we have this kind of, well, two sides of the coin. One is private good and a common good. Yeah. The common good, well, in a sense, for public university, they always claim that this is a common good for the society. It means you are subsidized by us, and then we need to take care of the society. Whereas you are the private university, of course you have your own private interests, okay, and then you are subsidized by your own organization, by your own sponsor. Now that's about very, very superficial definition. But we have another meanings for common good. Yep. Another thing is more related to the universal good. Yep. That's what Jesuit and Catholic are focusing on. And we are talking about common good. It's not just about the national boundary. It's more than that. Okay. We need to look at for example, the marginalized or the poor people's needs here, and then try to help them out to serve these kinds of underprivileged people or underprivileged people's needs. I also elaborate another common good. I always forgot about that, the third one, but let me come back to that one later. But I think well, for example, you might go to Japan. Yep. When they're doing something, they are looking for this kind of benefits. Yeah. Well, it seems to me that they are looking for something is more beneficial. It's I mean, it might be common. Yep. To look at their national interest. Anything can bring interest to them, it will be good. For example, Jesuit is the first international university in Japan or in some other countries. And they think that this is a treasure because you have this kind of quality, this kind of feature, and that's why they welcome you. Okay, but at the same time, they understand, religion is something that they do not treasure. So they also have their own, hidden agenda, try to undermine, the religious part. Now that's what I can observe in the past. Yeah, but anyway, it's a difficult part. Yeah, and that's why I think Jesuits are definitely very, very good. Yep, in this era to enter different countries and try to contribute. According to the goals of the organization. Niam, do you have anything to say?
Well, just to say, I mean, the His Holiness Pope Francis, of course, being a Jesuit, the framework really in terms of the accommodation, the groundwork for that has been set by the Second Vatican Council, particularly the Church in the Modern World. And Stefan, you do mention the question of social justice, and of course, those sorts of issues, can be seen as a positive way of, working towards that accommodation. And as Bernard says, how that's interpreted will differ in different environments. But the framework is there, and I think the Jesuits do work very strongly with that post-Vatican that Vatican II framework about the accommodations with the Church in the modern world. But of course, Catholicism is more than social justice, and there will be the religious life in the university. But I think you're right, actually, in terms of the diplomatic, if that's the right way, the ecclesiological role here of the university is to make an accommodation, because by their very nature, and this would apply even in my own university at Oxford, the permanent private halls do have themselves to make some accommodations to those sorts of secular frameworks, including the legal and political context in which, for example, if we take the Jesuits like Campion Hall exist. So just a small point. Yeah.
Great. Maybe along the lines of the other part of the question, it's Father Fernando Aspiros asking for dialogue. We are just about to publish a new series on dialogue with China, with World Scientific Press, where we kind of position also ourselves the profile of our research focused on comparative spirituality, obviously also about history of missionaries, social innovation, moral leadership. I think this is also, to be fostered, this dialogue with others, also in our Asian context, dialogue with Buddhism, Taoism, Islam. So any more questions? So
of course, regarding different religion, in a university, they always promote this equality that they can have the dialogue with different religions. Yeah, some universities, they have this kind of dialogue regularly. I just want to add one more point regarding the common good. Yeah, the third one is more related to Catholic or the Jesuit as well. It's about the social inclusive, the common good. This is very, very outstanding. Because when Jesuit said that, or maybe, Catholic teaching is about you have to serve other people, right? And then, you just, try to promote this. Yeah, we will serve, the minority. Yeah, and that's about in different universities also include different programs, yeah, to accommodate the needs of the minority. Yeah, for example, in one country, for example, in Indonesia, they also have the prayer room for different religions, not just exclusive, and they just got this kind of open space, yeah, for people to use it anytime. Okay. That's what I would like to supplement.
If I could ask Liam a question,
please.
You're referring back to Gaudium et Spes and using the profoundly erroneous translation of its title as the Constitution on the Church in the Modern World. Actually, that isn't what it's called. It's called Today, and I'm 56. The document is the same age as me, and when I read it as a theologian and a man of the born in the 1960s, I find myself reading a book. Reading a document that describes a world that speaks to the post-war pessimism and optimism of my grandparents, and not to, for example, the world of my three children who are in their 20s, mid-20s, and late 20s. And really, I'm always left with the feeling that there's a kind of naivety about partners in dialogue.
100%. Yeah.
It seems to proceed on the basis that our dialogue partners are acting in good faith. Now, we all know that there's a very good good historical reason why it had to be like that, because apart from anything else, if it had not been, one of its major authors wouldn't have been allowed to come from Poland to Rome to the council in the first place.
Correct.
But I do think, particularly here in China, for example, we have to ask ourselves all the time whether we're actually engaging with other actors who are acting in good faith. That'll make Stefan laugh. I'm very pessimistic. I'm very pessimistic.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I mean, well, just if we're sharing birth years, Stefan, I'm 62, okay? I'm born in 62, 59, so a couple of years on you there. So I was born the year the council opened. Not that I was taking much notice in those early months, but interestingly, and I share this. It's not seemingly not relevant, but it struck me of late recent years. My birth date, which is something you don't really exactly need to know, is the 2nd of June. Now, the reason I highlight that is also the birth date of Pope St. Pius X. And this is a growing, I mean, I say being born in the year of the Second Vatican Council on the birth date of the great Pope St. Pius X, and those sorts of tensions, as you say, between the certainty of the faith and, well, I mean, and what is perceived sometimes as the ambiguities of some aspects of modern theology. I wasn't directly tracing I'm not a Latin scholar, so it might be easier. It's not only, the church in the modern world, I think, I used to teach this, but 20 plus years ago with my old friend, Father Professor Michael Hayes, who went on himself to be, we published Contemporary Catholic Theology back in 97. It was in fact a Russian translation of that work as well in America. And what we used to do, Michael was really the expert in the Vatican Council theology, but the church in the modern world, and Michael was we were always saying about this is the pastoral rather than a doctrinal council. This is a pastoral, so that's the sense I meant. But as regards this point you make about the naivety, if we stick to the Latin, as far as I recall, I was going to reach to my copy there on whatever translation is, there's Lumen Gentium, there's Gaudium et Spes, but Lumen Gentium, but also in relation to other religions, Nostra Aetate, which is the shortest document of the council. And in terms of the naivety, yes, I do take this in relation to dialogue. It's a term in secular religious education, which I have responsibility for here, that absolutely permeates modern religious education. But it's dialogue without really clear stances of where people are. Now, in certain ideological contexts, China and the former Soviet Union and so forth, that is very, very well defined. And it's not just, let's say, a party game. These are really very serious issues to be raised. Yes, there is arguably some degree of naivety and a kind of superficiality in terms of that engagement with the politics. It was Pope Saint Paul VI, of course, that came in. But when you read, there are also, however, strong resonances of the modern world. They are referring to the atheistic state. The Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and good in these religions. There's a reference to, and think this is in Lumen Gentium rather than Gaudium et Spes, about atheists and so forth. And we actually even see this now in the Good Friday liturgy. It's incorporated into liturgical form. And this question about the exclusivity or otherwise of faith. And I don't think it's ever, despite even the doctrines of no salvation outside the church, which is a sort of parody of pre-Vatican II, nobody would have the right, actually, by God's grace, to exclude anybody. So it's not to say that by special grace, and even in the Acts of the Apostles, those outside the faith, when Peter meets the apostles, the centurion and so forth like this. Yes, there is. However, I do think that given this very tragic situation at the moment that we're dealing with, again, it brings back resonances of that first year of my birth of 1962, when you see the reference to the potential destruction of the world. I think it's the Vatican II is and I'm not partisan here really. I'm very much aware of a lot of sympathy with traditionalists, but I can really see a lot of the positives there. The church trying to engage in, you know, really existential sorts of crises, and I see a bit of circularity here. The difference with the current situation there, which is neighboring China, of course, to some degree, is difficult to work out what the ideology is there and what dialogue would mean there in that context. In Russia, there is the religious context of the Orthodox Church, which is, you know, almost an issue of the state church. It's really complex, and it's really very important. And I think, Bernard, these are some of the questions and nuances that you'll want to bring out in your debate. These are not simply abstractions. These discussions, they're not abstractions. They are, you know. And I think you do read it. If you read geopolitics, I've done a fair bit of work on security and intelligence myself, and multidisciplinary sorts of contexts, and working with people who do work in those agencies. My work there has been the role of the university as a knowledge provider and security and intelligence in the broader sense. And it's in the heartland. So again, we come back to how important the universities are. The universities of security, science, atomic, you know, with your neighbor there over in Japan, and all of this. I mean, this is extremely important, and the role of the university is so important, really, in terms of formation. So long response, but I mean, yeah, no, it's worthy of discussing further. But what the final sentence is: when you do read the documents, you do see some level of what, in geopolitical specialist terms, would be considered quite naive. You know, it's quite naive. We're all working in this world where it's, and yes, fine, but, you know, look at the realities, and it's yeah, and they are very harsh realities, aren't they?
And it's fair to say that the fathers, or a number of the fathers at the council, were well aware of that. If you read the debates, the interventions, yeah, these issues are contested. It was contested by people who were, I think, perpetually pessimistic about the world.
Yes. I mean, yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, the old doctrines of the world, the flesh, the devil. I mean, you know, it's not, you know, it's not something you actually light and darkness, you know, and all of those sorts of nuances. And of course, you get in Carol Wottilia that you were referring to, of course, in terms of the liberty of religion, and also Benedict as the earlier, even before he was was a major figure. Ratzinger was a major figure, of course, there as well. And later on, I think they retracted, given the consequences of it in the world. They seemed, both those papal figures, I think to some degree, sort of retracted when they saw the implications of what had been worked out in the world, retracted elements of that. And, you know, we have Pope Benedict XVI withdrawing into a monastic sort of enclosure within the Vatican City. Pope John Paul II, he would have no accommodation in terms of the communist ideology, liberation theology, social justice sorts of things, the Nicaragua, the whole of South America. I mean, he was deeply opposed, of course, as you know, to that. And that is based, and it was based on ideological. There was an overemphasis of an accommodation with Marxist and communist ideology, particularly in relation to canon law and priests taking roles within, you know, what were essentially revolutionary states. It's fascinating.
Of course, what he specifically rejected was this whole notion of dialectic.
Yeah.
And if you reject dialectic, then you're going to have a problem when you encounter Marxism.
Pretty big problem. That's right. You know, and also, but I mean, we're talking about dialectic. That's actually a very specific view of history. It's a Marxist view of history. It's kind of somewhat utterly materialistic. And, you know, the church's view of would not, and utterly rejects that view. I mean, yeah.
I would just share a point I frequently have discussed also with our director, Stephen Morgan. The last book by John Paul II Memory and Identity, which basically is interviews with two Polish philosophers, has significantly as the major source Gaudium et Spes. I find that's very significant, that I think reveals him as a philosophical thinker. And you have here all this kind of inspiration of his philosophical thinking, deeply by Gaudium et Spes, while of course it's true, Cardinal Ratzinger has highlighted the dark sides of the Gaudium et Spes, but I think without never retracting. See. Now, shall we go to now definitely to Bernard with a tough one, as we have this question also addressing of the Hong Kong social unrest, which had participation of a lot of university students. So referring to the event in Hong Kong, to pose question, at least local in Hong Kong, the role and the responsibility of the university. So what significance can the Jesuit education ideal have in relation to political participation by universities?
Well, first of all, I can see, the university, the Jesuit university, in some country, different countries got different adaptation. And as previously mentioned by Stephen, Professor Morgan, it is a harsh reality. And,
So, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, long story short, it varies. Yeah, I studied 4 countries, interview people, and people are bold enough, yep, to speak it to me, but I have to anonymize their names. Yep. And only in the Philippines, yeah, people can speak it more freely about this kind of religious contest. But for other countries, I think it's not the same. Yeah, to be honest. But whether our Jesuit leaders should go out to speak out their value in public or not, yeah, but some university really promote this, yeah, as internal leader or external leader. Sometimes for some countries they want to be external leader because they really want to gain benefits from the Jesuit network. However, they're not trying to say that I want to promote social equality. Okay, about this kind of equality, inclusiveness, you name it, in this kind of social responsibility. No, it's not like that. It's about the strength of a nation. Yeah, people always like to talk about that, about the boundary. This is not something naive. This is something very, very practical, from their point of view. And if you really want to do something, you have to go back to this kind of dialogue. Yep, let's go back to this same level, equality. Because otherwise, well, the country will be interfered by, they call it the foreign religion. I don't know, how can you define foreign, but well, some countries, they're really sensitive about that. Okay, I'm talking about this kind of foreign Asian countries, yeah, very sensitive. And I think Father Stefan can also chip in, yeah, regarding the experience in Latin America. Throughout the history, 400 or 500 years history, Jesuit also experienced, some dark period. Yep, Jesuit is shut down for, almost like half a century. Yeah, before when you look at the Jesuit history, it's been closed down. Yep, no Jesuit at all. Yep, except in Russia, well, in Soviet Union.
Maybe for Edward, I want also give a bit of background of the situation in Hong Kong, that the Jesuits had the project to start the liberal arts college, some 8 years ago. So it is just not, your question is not a theoretical question, so it's something which would be very much, need to be addressed.
Long story short, yeah, I don't have the answer, to you, but I can, tell you something that I've learned here from the interviewees, from the leaders, whether they are Jesuit or non-Jesuit leaders, yeah, in Asian countries. Okay, yes. And we understand the journey of this, Jesuit education is not at all very easy. Yeah, not at all. Yes. Okay,
maybe
that's long story short.
Edward Kwan, would you like to elaborate maybe on your question and share your view if you want because we have been a bit interrupted, so not to make sure that you...
Sure.
Yeah.
From my perspective or experience in Hong Kong, I think, of course, it is very desirable to have that kind of moral dimension to be introduced, to be implemented in university. I think that's a part of the formation, moral formation, or even functional formation of a person to serve in a certain geographical framework, a country or society or community. But I think from the Hong Kong perspective, seems Hong Kong University is quite lacking in that moral dimension. Maybe due to this lacking in moral dimension, something conducive to the lack of consideration for others, men and women, which is the title of Bernard's talk today. So when we talk about concern for other men and women, so we have to ask ourselves the parameter of this, how to qualify, what do you mean by men and women, I mean others, men and women. So it could be a very controversial topic to talk about. So it could be conducive to even political conflict or political debate at least. Are you serving the men and women within my definition, or whether you are serving the men and women universally according to your definition? So I think Bernard can maybe share a little bit more about the definition of men and women or others, this very significant philosophical concept of otherness. So in Hong Kong, you know, we see a university student throwing gas bomb to others. So I think it's a very practical phenomenon to apply the ideal that Bernard introduced to us, you know, about the ideal Jesuit education. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your question. According to my understanding, Father, you can elaborate and chip in anytime, yeah, because it's the mission of the Jesuit, or the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus. And it's clearly stated in the Universal Apostolic Preferences. They have 4, important core values. One is about spirituality. The other 3, they are talking about the others, okay, the youngsters, okay. You need to teach them and grow them to be the whole person. And the second one is the poor people or the marginalized people, okay. And these are the others, yeah, the poor people, marginalized people, and they understand it so clearly. So we can, serve it, in the society. One of them is in the Philippines, yeah. They always like to, send their students, because they're called elite university. They're really, really clever. The students are talented. And they send them, to the villagers and then help them out, yeah, for the daily need of the people. Because they don't understand. They're coming from the well-off family in the Philippines. And for others, let them know that, in the society, not just about, in Hong Kong, you have Kowloon Tong, but you also have some poor area. Yeah, you need to, at least be aware in the society. Someday you might be the leader of the society, but that's the time, for the Jesuit leader to show you the picture of the world. There are different facets. Let you, think over again. Yep, in the society, it's not just about, from your point of view, always be a selfish guy. Okay, always, be student-centered. Okay, that's something the teacher, one of the professors actually said that, our students are becoming more individualistic. They always think that they are, they are to be served and not others. Okay, I'm sorry. They always, undermine themselves, saying that, oh, I'm the little one, you have to serve me. So other people, like the professors, they are just slaves to them. Yeah, that's their ideology. But that's not about Jesuit. Jesuit are talking about the poor people, the underprivileged people. Go out of the university. Okay, and these kinds of leaders are what we call it, this kind of external leaders. Okay, we need to give them the reality. Okay, the reality is harsh, yeah, but I'm not to be selfish, yeah, try to be selfless. Okay, in that sense, yeah. So if they understand that, for the students in Hong Kong, they understand that they won't, damage the public property. They know how to use, their own talent to establish the society. To establish is far more, important to represent, everything, if you believe that everything is built, by God, behind it is about, the presence of God. Yeah, you won't do it something destructively. I think, yeah. And we understand, who is the destination, yeah, about this kind of, sustainability of Jesuit, thinking. You teach them, and then someday, well, they will come back again for these youngsters, yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, for the Filipino university, they're really great, yeah. A lot of, them are not priests, but they study in the primary school, in the Jesuit university, and then they grown up, in the secondary school and also in the university, and eventually they were the professor over there. And that's about the cycle, right? Yep. Start from the teens, yep. In that particular period of time, you understand the Jesuit value, and to serve others. Okay, try to humble yourself. That's what I learned from the Jesuit leaders and also their teachers. It's really, really good. They always mention about this kind of impressive experience in their university. About what's the purpose of life, yeah? Because God has given me this kind of opportunities. That's why I will be more grateful. I want to contribute, yeah, because of that. I'm not well, it doesn't mean that I have to want to get more and more just for my own good. But Jesuit said that for the greater glory of God. I think it's so good, yeah. You look for or you seek perfection, not just because of your own glory, but there's someone bigger than us, yeah. And I think it's it's something that I've been aspired, and also that's one of the reasons I would like to study the Jesuit community. And for every religious order, there must be something so beautiful that we can learn from. And for their journey, I think throughout their 500 years history, they really done have a great job. Yeah, they have already established 200 universities over the world. And it doesn't mean that they don't have any difficulties. In Latin America, Father, you can chip in. Yeah, what have you experienced in Latin America? It's chaotic over there, and throughout history, a lot of people still today, India, Jesuit priest, your friend has been killed. Your father's friend has been killed, right? Yep, in India today. I'm talking about recent past. And it's, if you really want to push, something over there, while just serving the poor people, and even, the poor people, this kind of act, will be complained by the local government. It's so strange. I'm not talking about the religion, only something, a small request, a humble request, you will be rejected by the government. And Father, maybe you can,
yes,
help out.
Maybe you
in
call me.
sense,
I be obedient to Bernard. So as he is frozen again, so it's appropriate that I chip in. So Edward, also to address your issue, I think sometimes also the church helps as Jesuits, I speak now as a Jesuit, to realize what is our mission. So I refer, for instance, one, I think, very appropriate remark from Paul VI, who claimed wherever there are social tensions, there are the Jesuits. See, and it's in a sense, we should be there where stones are thrown. And it's true, for instance, just as I mentioned, my Indian friend I knew in Manila, who got beheaded when he was back. But I also want to mention, for instance, another very capable French Jesuit, André Mas, with whom became friend in Paris, who after already a successful career as a writer and editor of a journal, went to the Lebanon and then taught there in the southern Lebanon, where there were still the war going on. And he was then also killed, so by two students. So right after I was ordained. So it's basically, we have sometimes to pay what we mean. And I think that's in a sense, should not be disturbing. So these conflicts, Jesuits should be there, in the middle of the conflict, and then see, like these Jesuits in the Lebanon describe, people who are in war against each other, how you bring about reconciliation. I think that's really at the core of what we have to be with the people and with the students. And I think in all the universities, actually also Bernard was doing his research, they had also huge political movements, where the Jesuits had to hide somewhere, because they were attacked by the students. But it's just, for me, a confirmation, it's right, we should be there. Yes, I was very much also in favor for this project in Hong Kong, but there are other opportunities.
Stefan, I hope you think that one of those other opportunities takes place 25 miles or 40 kilometers west of Hong Kong. I'm very interested in Edward's question because, of course, one of the obsessions with the educational authorities here is that we don't allow our universities in Macau to become tainted by bad student Hong Kong, that we continue to be good student Macau, very obedient and patriotic. I'm always reminded when I hear those words of the line of Samuel, the definition of patriotism in Samuel Johnson's dictionary at the middle of the 18th century, patriotism, the last refuge of the scoundrel. It brings back into all that stuff about othering, actually, that Edward spoke about. Who are the other, or who are the others? Yeah. What are they? And if we don't proceed from, we see this in Ukraine. Yes, I think you saw it with students throwing projectiles at one another in Hong Kong. You can only do some of those things if you deny something of the humanity of the other. And we see this in the West particularly with the Holocaust against the unborn. We simply deny the humanity of the unborn, and therefore it's possible for us to do what we will. And I think actually what the Catholic University, and specifically because of its commitment to being in places of contested spaces, the Jesuit university or the Jesuit presence in a Catholic university, what that kind of speaks to, I think, is always about honoring the humanity of the other. And I think that's a very, and Stefan knows, I cede no ground to the Jesuits in any case unless I absolutely have to. But I think it's a very, very, very central part of the mission of Catholic education, and specifically the Jesuit presence in Catholic education, to witness to that, and that becomes a massively powerful witness to the reality of God and to the love of God, which doesn't actually require very often more than that witness to evoke a response in the other that says, well, it's back to that text from the first letter of St. Peter, chapter 3, verse 15, always be ready to give an account of the hope that is in you. Yeah. In order to do that, you have to live in such a way that you manifest that hope, and that you manifest to the other the ability for them to ask you the question, why do you live like this? Why are you like this? That's actually the model of new evangelization, because it's the model of the original evangelization. It's how the pagan deeply anti-religious, in the same sense that Japan is anti-religious, to pick up Bernard's point of earlier, the deeply anti-religious pagan world was converted to Christianity. It wasn't converted actually by explicit doctrinal witness until the question was asked, why are you these people of hope? And I think in a context of Hong Kong, and specifically in Hong Kong, the opportunity to do that, to be that witness, I think is very, very important. even if it does mean you get stuff thrown at you from both directions.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Actually, I have a little bit of experience of the experience of otherness. I once was visiting academia, teaching at the University of St. Joseph, and my experience of otherness, the otherness of the minority. In my classroom, there are a few students. After a few lessons, I found out that they had a bit of difficulties due to their English standard in really comprehending my my lecture. And I think that is a kind of encountering with otherness. Otherness within that classroom. They are not majority, of course, majority of the students, they are brilliant. Their English is fascinating. But I spot there are 3 or 4 students. They are minor otherness. So I think in terms of spirituality, which I was quite influenced and inspired by University of St. Joseph, that the atmosphere there allow us to take care of the otherness, the minority, the underprivileged, or even the undercapable. I mean, just in terms of those few students who really had difficulties in understanding my PowerPoint, my lecturing. And I have that kind of spiritual experience that I came home and I reflect, what should I do? How should I, not how should I live, but how should I deliver my lecture? I don't have to go to that macro question, how should I live? I'm not a Jesuit, I'm not a priest, I'm a Christian, but I'm not that religious. I would say I'm quite a liberal Christian, but I encountered that challenge. What should I do in the face of those few students which represent otherness in that classroom?
In some respect, that brings the whole thing full circle back to Bernard's question about how the role of the Jesuit university in forming men and women for others. It seems to me to be really why this evening's conference is actually asking some really important questions, and why Bernard's study is actually really quite important.
Well, I have to add a little bit, and then at the subsequent lecture, I deliver my lecture in English, but I add 1 or 2 lines of Cantonese, which to convey the main idea. Even though I'm visiting academia from Hong Kong to Macau, but I had this spiritual encountering, and that's this challenge. What should I do in the face of otherness? I think it is a very philosophical concept, and the case in Hong Kong is we had witnessed a major episode of anti-otherness. Of course, the Holocaust is a whole anti-otherness tragedy. Thank you, Bernard.
Bernard, you want to address this question? So otherwise, I think I appreciate, Edward, you stressed the opportunity of USJ as a small university. I may also make a little bit a case for Hong Kong U. I got the positive side. It was way too much students, over 100 now at the Faculty of Business and Economics. But it's true, if you have a huge amount of students who maybe even have brilliant English all, it's another situation to USJ. And I appreciate that you brought it up as a chance, an opportunity, and you value this chance of maybe now the one and only Catholic university in China. So I appreciate that you have valued this, by and I think this may be now the moment, Bernard, not for a glorious, it was really a fascinating debate. I really much appreciate. If you want just maybe conclude with what you want to share, because I really appreciate so many seminars we did together. So what is maybe a last message you want to convey to our participants?
Thank you so much, Father Stefan's time, and thank you so much, for the debate over the, this kind of mission of the Jesuits, becoming men and women for others. And thank you so much, Professor, Stephen Morgan and Edward's questions. And is it Carol? Yep, another question, I can't remember, her name. But that's why, this is not easy, but still someone would be, selflessly, promote, and also they also walk their talk in different countries throughout the centuries to, to be more persistent regarding the faith, and because they trust, God, is behind everything, and that's why they continue the journey to pass this good hope and faith to others, no matter how difficult it is, no matter, to some extent they have to sacrifice their life, and people still continue the journey, to, to do the same. At the end of the day, hopefully they can achieve, their final goal.
Thank you very much. And I just want to also very briefly refer to our core mission, both University of St. Joseph and Macau Rich Institute, a comprehensive analysis of history of China, what we want to do. And I'm really very pleased to also share with our audience that we are receiving 45,000 books at USJ. So after the destruction 5 years ago by the typhoon of over 25,000 books. So this is a step forward. And I really appreciate also this appreciation of USJ as a chance to promote these kind of Catholic universal values. So also I want pleased to announce on April 22nd, we are going to launch the Alfred Deignan Award for Responsible Entrepreneurship at USJ. So this will be also a chance in a rather dark time to kind of promote values of entrepreneurship and ethics in a cutthroat business environment. But for today, again, many thanks to you, Bernard. Liam, was great to have also Liam. And thanks you to all, also much appreciate the participation of Reverend Stephen Morgan. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us on this talk.
Thank you, Stephen.
And for,
thank you, Edward.
And wish you a nice evening and goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, for all of you. Bye-bye.